discover the incredible power of a calm black maid. Her unexpected actions changed lives forever. In the heart of suburban Atlanta, where the sun kissed the lavish lawns of the affluent, Emma, a calm and wise African-American maid, weaved through the echoing hallways of the Johnson home. To the world, she was just a maid. But in reality, she was a warrior of the spirit, a gentle force in a household tangled in the thorny vines of privilege and unspoken biases. Tensions hung thick in the air, like humidity before a summer storm. The Johnsons, usually bustling with laughter, were riddled with worry. Financial uncertainty loomed, and the cracks in their perfect lives were beginning to show. Emma took it all in stride. She moved through the chaos with grace, the kind of presence that made it feel like everything would be okay. She understood the silent struggles of the Johnsons, often wrestling with their own insecurities that emerged as whispered prejudices and carefully shielded shame. Her heart ached for them, though they had little idea of her own painful past. With a spark of hope mingling with trepidation, she decided to host a neighborhood barbecue, a modest gesture that promised connection and camaraderie. Emma envisioned families coming together, laughter rising like smoke from the grill, old friends rekindled, new friendships sparked, and healed wounds. Yet, as the date approached, fear crept in. Would her neighbors accept her when they learned about her own sacrifices made in shadows? Would they see her as simply a maid, the character of the woman overshadowed by her history? Days later, when the barbecue finally arrived, the air was heavy with expectation. Children ran wild, laughter echoing like music through the beautifully manicured yard. Still, Emma felt a tight knot in her chest. The first smiles and hellos were like chords in a long-forgotten song, bringing warmth to her heart. But just as the first plates filled with delicious food found their way through the crowd, an icy shiver ran through the gathering. A racial slur, carelessly thrown from a hidden corner, shattered the joyful atmosphere like glass breaking. The laughter faltered, and uncomfortable glances exchanged between neighbors revealed the festering prejudices adeptly concealed beneath their polite facades. Emma's heart raced, the pit of her stomach twisting. It was now or never. Gathering her courage, she stepped forward. "Excuse me," she said softly but firmly, her voice rising above the sudden hush. Emma wasn't just an employee. She was a member of this community, a beacon of resilience forged in struggle. Sharing her story, one of hardship etched deeply into her heart, she spoke of dreams once dashed by circumstance, how dignity sometimes took refuge in silent sacrifice. For every moment she fought through invisibility, she carried a flame inside her, still beating, a hope that flickered even in the darkest times. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let us continue. As Emma poured out her heart, the air buzzed with raw emotion. Her fears clashed with the hope conveyed in her words. It was a moment heavy with vulnerability. The crowd shifted, glancing from one to another, voices hushed. With a deep breath, she unveiled her own dreams, one that bridged the chasms not just for her, but for everyone who had ever felt unseen. The sun dipped low, casting an amber glow over the gathering of hesitant hearts. Emma's story lingered, a soft thread weaving through the fabric of their lives. An uncomfortable silence settled, heavy with questions. Could they truly face their biases and heal together, or would those long-buried prejudices suffocate the flicker of connection that Emma had ignited? The stillness was palpable, a moment held in collective breath. Emma's eyes scanned the crowd, landing on faces painted with unease, yet some flickered with the spark of understanding. The sun dipped lower, casting shadows that danced around her, each yard of distance between her and the Johnsons growing smaller. She could almost hear the questioning thoughts of those gathered, a whisper of doubt lacing the air. Would they accept her truth? "Look," Emma continued, her voice steady, "I'm not just here to clean your houses or take care of your children. I'm here to build connections. We're part of this community because we want to be, each and every one of us." The children, once roaring with laughter, now played quietly, eyes wide, ears pricked to this conversation unfolding like a story beyond a bedtime tale. Almost instinctively, Sarah Johnson, the matriarch of the family, stepped forward, her expression torn. "Emma," she began, her voice trembling. "We had no idea. I just thought." She paused, searching for the right words. The tension in her shoulders relaxed slightly, revealing more than uncertainty. It was vulnerability. "I thought we were beyond all of this." Without skipping a beat, Emma nodded, understanding washing over her. "We all have these preconceived ideas, don't we? It's hard to escape the boxes others put us in. But maybe tonight, we can break some of those walls down. Maybe we can learn from each other." As Emma spoke, she could see the others beginning to shift their stances, the way they looked at one another, some nodding, some reaching for the hands of their partners. There was power in her words, a quiet strength begging them to cross that line of comfort they had drawn around themselves. Mark, the Johnsons' teenage son, shifted uneasily but spoke up. "I never saw you as someone who de-struggled." The room went still again. "I mean, I thought everyone just had it figured out." "It's crazy how it's okay," Emma interrupted gently. "We all have our battles. Some are just harder to see than others. It's about recognizing them and talking about them." She gestured to the group. "Why can't we all just sit and share? Stories could heal what has broken between us. We're all human." At that moment, an unexpected guest arrived, a neighbor who had previously kept her distance. Charlotte, a single mother new to the neighborhood, slowly approached Emma. "I've been too afraid to speak," she admitted, her voice shaky. "But if you can share, maybe I can too." Emma felt a lightness in her heart. This was the moment she had hoped for. A bridge was forming. People who once hesitated to converse now stood on the precipice of understanding. The barbecue air was thick with more than smoke. It was alive with a renewed purpose. As more neighbors gathered, sharing their own truths, Emma felt the warmth of connection enveloping her. Each story woven into the fabric of that evening created a tapestry of empathy. They laughed, cried, and grew closer than she ever imagined possible. As the light faded into dusk, Emma's heart swelled with hope. She had ignited something profound, a small revolution nestled in their cul-de-sac. It was messy, it was complicated, but more importantly, it was necessary. Just as the final pieces of the barbecue were being stored away, the sounds of unity still echoed in the air. A bond had been formed, and the Johnsons had begun to see Emma not just as a maid but as a sister in struggles. Now, she only wondered, could they maintain this connection once the sun rose again? Little did she know, the road ahead was fraught with challenges, and the true test of their newfound understanding was just waiting around the corner. The next morning broke with a crispness in the air, the kind that suggested a fresh start. Emma awoke with the warmth of yesterday's revelation still lingering in her heart. She perched by her kitchen window, the sunlight pouring in like a hug, feeling the promise of connection wash over her. Yet, her optimism wavered as she recalled the conversations from the night before. The weight of vulnerability shared weighed heavily on her. Could the bonds they formed withstand the realities of everyday life? Would Sarah and Mark Johnson still see her as an equal after the initial glow faded? Emma's heart spoke of hope, but her head wrestled with doubt. Later that morning, Emma arrived at the Johnsons' home for her usual routine. Stepping through the door, she noticed Sarah's anxiety reflected in her tired eyes. The cozy kitchen, bustling with the sounds of breakfast, felt charged. It was as if everything had changed overnight, yet the same old rhythm remained. "Hey, Emma," Sarah said, her voice not quite steady, "I need to talk to you later. It's about last night." The subtle edge in Sarah's tone sent a shiver down Emma's spine. "Sure," Emma replied with a soft smile, though her stomach churned. While managing chores, Emma caught glimpses of the Johnson family. Mark was distracted, scrolling through his phone, while his younger sister, Lily, poured cereal. It was a domestic scene she had seen countless times before, yet it now felt weighed down by unspoken truths. As Emma scrubbed the kitchen floors, her thoughts drifted back to Charlotte, the neighbor who had opened up. "I wonder how she is doing today." Emma hoped she felt bolstered by last night's unity. The memory of Charlotte, standing unguarded and willing to share, gave Emma the strength to keep pushing forward. When the kitchen was finally spotless, Emma put her hands on her hips, feeling a sense of accomplishment. But the room still hummed with tension, and she could sense Sarah's eyes on her, as if waiting for permission to speak her mind. "Emma," Sarah began, finally finding her voice, "I wasn't completely honest last night." The air thickened around them. "There are people in our neighborhood who aren't happy with, well, the things we discussed. They might not be ready for this." Emma felt her heart drop. "You mean, they'd rather stay in the dark?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I think they might, yes." "I'm not sure what this means for us," Sarah admitted, wringing her hands as if trying to squeeze the words out. "My family has always been traditional. You know how people can be." "I thought we were moving forward together," Emma replied, a hint of frustration bubbling. "What happened to those connections? The stories we shared?" Tears threatened to spill from Sarah's eyes now, her vulnerability stark against the backdrop of their once simple routine. "I want to change this. I want us to be part of something better," she pleaded. "But I'm scared." Emma stepped closer, a rush of compassion flooding her. "We can be scared together then," she suggested gently. "It's not easy, but we owe it to ourselves and each other to give this a real shot. The magic from last night doesn't just disappear." As Sarah nodded, a brave smile breaking through the tension, Emma felt a flicker of hope. Maybe they could forge a path, not just for themselves, but for the whole community. Just then, the front door swung open, revealing Charlotte standing there, her eyes wide and hesitant. "I heard you were here, and I'm ready to share more," she said, her voice trembling yet resolute. Emma's heart leapt. With Charlotte's arrival, the web of connection had a chance to expand even further. But with this new possibility, doubts and hearts lay bare. Would others really join them in their pursuit of understanding? As their eyes met, the weight of possibility hung in the air, daring them to take the next step. Emma's heart raced, caught between exhilaration and fear at Charlotte's words. The air felt electric, charged with an urgency that settled over them like a thick blanket. The vulnerability of last night echoed in the persistence of this moment, a moment poised on the edge of new beginnings or tragic missteps. "More?" Emma echoed, her grip tightening around the dishcloth, a simple object suddenly heavy with meaning. "What do you mean?" Charlotte took a deep breath, her expression shifting from uncertainty to a fierce determination. "I've held on to my story for so long, afraid of how it might change things. But last night, I felt empowered. If we really want to build something, we need to reflect on where we've been." Emma nodded, urging her on. "Yes, please. Share with us. We want to understand." Sarah stepped closer, her worries slipping away to reveal anticipation. Charlotte's presence seemed to fill the room. "Okay. But just know, this is hard for me." She met their eyes, the fear palpable yet overshadowed by a flicker of hope. "In our neighborhood, tradition reigns. And for as long as I can remember, I've been the one who kept my head down, just stayed in my place." A silence enveloped them, punctuated only by the ticking clock on the wall. Emma felt her heart thump softly, like the tapping of drumsticks urging everyone to listen. But last year, Charlotte continued, something changed in me. I started volunteering, going to meetings. I realized I was tired of being invisible. Her voice quivered, raw and honest. So, I shared my background with the women in my book club, stories about my family, my dreams. They seemed interested, but I sensed the doubts. Would I really belong? Emma thought of her own struggles, how she often wondered if she'd ever fit in. You took a brave step, Charlotte, she whispered. What happened? A few women resonated with me, but their husbands weren't as receptive during neighborhood events. It was like they saw me as the maid again, rather than a neighbor or a friend. I faced the heaviness of their responses, their unwelcoming looks. Sometimes, it feels like I'm shouting into a void. The weight of Charlotte's experience settled in the room. Emma glanced at Sarah, who held her own breath, listening intently. But we can change that, Emma said, wanting to anchor the conversation into an action, a promise. Let us help you to rise together. We'll stand by you. Exactly. Sarah chimed in, her enthusiasm cutting through the heaviness. We need to shed light on our shared stories, not just burden one person with it. If we can work together, we might inspire others. Who knows? We could start a movement right here. Charlotte's eyes glimmered, hope flickering softly behind the worry. You think that's possible? Emma reached out, her hands clasping Charlotte's trembling ones. Absolutely. Together, we'll create a space where everyone feels safe to share. Just as the moment felt charged with potential, the door swung open again, this time revealing Mark. He stepped into the kitchen, a distracted expression quickly melting into confusion as he registered the atmosphere. What is going on? Why does it feel like a meeting? Emma shot him a look, half nervous, half hopeful. She knew he wouldn't understand the significance just yet, and there lay a deeper challenge. Could someone who remained tucked within the old norm grasp what was at stake? Mark, Charlotte said gently. We're trying to discuss how we can move forward together as a community. It's important. Mark's brow furrowed, skepticism flaring. I don't know if everyone is up for that, then let us show them. Emma interjected, her heart pounding louder than her thoughts. From this moment, we take the first step together. Mark hesitated, an inner battle apparent on his face. But just as Emma began to feel doubt creep back in, he blinked, the lines of confusion softening. Okay, he finally said, though a hesitant weight lingered in his voice. Let us see how this goes. Emma glanced at Charlotte, whose eyes widened with a mixture of hope and fear. This was an uncertain path full of potential. They all stood on the brink of change, ready or not, but as they began to gather their thoughts, an unexpected knock resonated against the door again. Each of them turned, hearts racing, filled with anticipation. Who could it be? Would they bring more uncertainty, or maybe more allies? Emma felt an inexplicable rush. This could redefine everything for them all. And just like that, they stood on the precipice, waiting for fate to unveil what lay beyond that door. The knock echoed through the kitchen, slicing the tension that had built around the group. Emma exchanged glances with Charlotte and Sarah, each face reflecting a mix of confusion and hope. Who was at the door? Mark stepped forward, the weight of his hesitation still heavy in the air. I'll get it, he offered, but his voice wavered. He took a breath, opened the door, and there stood Mrs. Foster, the elderly woman from 2 doors down, known for her sharp wit and sweet pastries. Hello, darlings, Mrs. Foster said, her eyes sparkling with a mix of curiosity and warmth. I heard some chatter, and thought I'd come and see what was going on. Emma relaxed slightly, as she stepped back to let Mrs. Foster in. We were just talking about community. Mrs. Foster cocked an eyebrow, immediately sensing the underlying urgency. Community, you say? Now that's an interesting topic. I hope it involves some pie baking too. Sarah chuckled, easing the mood. Maybe we can brainstorm a neighborhood gathering while we're at it. Mrs. Foster's face softened. That's precisely what this neighborhood needs. I've been wondering when we'd take the chance to gather. You know, back in the day, we had block parties that brought everyone together regardless of who they were or where they came from. Emma's pulse quickened again, realizing how perfectly their thoughts aligned. That's exactly what we were just discussing. We want to create a space where everyone feels safe to share. Mrs. Foster's eyes gleamed. Ah, my sweet girls, you don't know the power of your vision. If you want change, it has to come from the heart, and as a community, we have to nurture that together. Charlotte stepped forward, encouraged by Mrs. Foster's words. We're reaching out to everyone hoping that they'll open up too. But sometimes it's hard to know where to start, especially with the skepticism in the air. Dear, you have to start the conversation, Mrs. Foster replied, her tone growing more serious. You're right that there is doubt. But don't let that stop you. Change begins with courage, and someone at the forefront is needed to ignite that spark. Mark, feeling swept into the moment, nodded slowly. We can find a way to invite folks, make it a festivity that embodies sharing. But will they come? Of course, they will, Sarah exclaimed. If we make it a celebration of stories, food, and family, who would want to miss that? Mrs. Foster smiled, but threw a cautious glance at Mark. Not everyone might be on board, love. You may face resistance from the old guard, the ones set in their ways. But dare to be brave. The words hung in the air. Emma could feel the weight of what lay ahead. This was it. They could truly foster unity, but it wouldn't come easy. Let us plan for next weekend, Emma suggested, her voice gaining strength. A potluck. We all bring dishes that mean something to our families, maybe add some activities for the kids. A way to draw folks out of their corners. Charlotte's face lit up as she caught Emma's enthusiasm. Yes! A chance for everyone to connect. If we get it rolling, maybe that gives everyone their own chance to shine. Mrs. Foster clapped her hands together. I adore it. A vibrant tapestry of food and stories will reflect the heart of our neighborhood. As they rallied together to outline their ideas, Emma felt a warmth spreading through her. This was more than just a community gathering. It was the seed of hope, a nurturing ground for transformation. But just as Emma began to breathe easier, a chilling doubt crept back. What if the very people they wished to embrace rejected their kindness? The room fell silent as that thought gripped them. They were igniting a flame, but would it warm their neighborhood, or might it instead shine light on the shadows too deep to uncover? Emma drew in a sharp breath, her heart racing once again. They stood united in this endeavor, ready to take on anything. Then, there was another knock. This one was urgent, insistent. Emma's stomach tightened. Who could it be now? They all exchanged worried glances, hearts pounding with the uncertainty of what lay beyond the threshold. Would this new visitor be a friend, an ally, or could they bring a challenge that would shake their resolve? Emma slowly turned towards the door, the others crowding behind her, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and dread. She swallowed hard, the sound echoing louder than the knocks which seemed to reverberate through her very bones. Who is it? Mark called out, bracing himself for whatever awaited them. The knocking stopped momentarily, and then a voice broke through the stillness. It's me, Flora. The voice was calm yet firm. Emma's heart raced. Flora was the longtime maid of Mrs. Thompson, the neighborhood's most outspoken critic of anything that deviated from her ideal of normal. Mrs. Foster instinctively straightened and looked at the group with a knowing expression. Flora's got her finger on the pulse of this community. Open the door, dear. Taking a deep breath, Emma opened the door wide. There stood Flora, her warm brown skin glowing in the soft light of the kitchen, her hands resting at her sides, unassuming yet radiating strength. "Ladies," she nodded at them, and her gaze fell on the table scattered with papers and empty coffee cups. "I couldn't help but overhear your plans for a potluck." Emma stammered, yes." We were just—" Flora held up a hand, showing not a hint of impatience. "I think it's wonderful. This neighborhood could use the unity you're aiming for." But she paused, looking each of them in the eye. "You need to be ready for the dissent. Not everyone will see things the way you hope." Emma felt the weight of Flora's statement. "We want to invite everyone. Create a space where everyone feels welcome." Flora nodded slowly, contemplation in her expression. "I can help, you know. I know people. I can spread the word, but it might take more than a potluck to break through the barriers." Charlotte, always quick with ideas, spoke up. "Maybe you could share some of your own stories? The things you've seen in this neighborhood? It might just help others to open up, too." Flora stepped further into the room, her posture relaxing slightly. "Stories do have that kind of power. But it requires trust. And trust isn't easily earned." Sarah leaned against the table, arms crossed, her brows furrowing in thought. "What if we told our stories first, a kind of sharing circle leading up to the event? That could help create a safe atmosphere." Emma watched as Flora's eyes brightened just a bit. "That could work. But you all must be ready for what might come out. This community is layered, with history that's not always pretty." "Are you saying we should brace for confrontation?" Mark asked quietly, anxiety creeping into his voice. "Only if you're discouraged by the truth," Flora replied, her tone steady. "The truth may be uncomfortable, but it also has the potential to heal." The room fell silent as everyone considered her words. Flora was right. They were inviting vulnerabilities along with connections. To forge true community, they'd have to dig into the very places that had remained untouched for years. "Then we'll do it," Emma said firmly, feeling a pulse of courage surge through her. "We'll start the storytelling next week. We'll peel back those layers together." Flora's face softened, a hint of pride in her eyes. "Good. Just remember, each story has the power to build bridges or burn them. Be mindful." As they began discussing details, the chill of fear receded, replaced with a tentative warmth of hope. Still, the earlier tension returned to Emma's gut. What if someone spoke out, sharing things no one was prepared to hear? Suddenly, the back door swung open violently, revealing a tall figure, Mr. Thompson. With a scowl etched deep on his face, he entered the kitchen, arms crossed tightly over his chest. "What is all this fuss about a potluck?" he demanded, the authoritative tone unmistakable. Emma's heart raced again, the resolve they'd built now hanging by a thread. "Are we ready to face the storm that could be brewing?" she thought as she exchanged incredulous, anxious glances with the others. Mr. Thompson's firm eyes zeroed in on them, and as dread pooled in the pit of her stomach, Emma braced herself for the confrontation ahead. Emma took a step forward, heart pounding, and said, "Mr. Thompson, we're just trying to bring the neighborhood together. A potluck can help foster understanding." His brow furrowed deeper. Understanding? Or more division? He glanced around at the group, his disdain palpable. "I know what happens when you let everyone put their opinions on display. It breeds chaos." "Or connection," Charlotte challenged, clutching her notebook tightly as if it were a shield. "Isn't that worth fighting for?" Mr. Thompson's gaze shot to Charlotte, and the room stilled. For a moment, it felt as though the air itself had thickened, charged with unspoken fears and truths. Emma could feel the growing tension, mixed with a hint of rebellion sparked by Charlotte's words. People in this community are set in their ways, and they don't want to hear any tales that don't fit into their narrow narratives. Mr. Thompson replied, raising his voice. "You think you can just change hearts over a plate of food?" Flora stepped forward, her presence commanding attention, and the fire in her eyes was now matched by the determination in her voice. "Mr. Thompson, change never comes without discomfort. You've seen how this neighborhood can thrive when we embrace each other, instead of drawing lines in the sand." "Embrace? You mean let them in?" he scoffed, shaking his head. "Those people have nothing to offer us. We have our lives just fine without they deserve to be heard." Emma interrupted, her voice stronger than before, surprising herself. "If we don't share our stories, how will anyone understand where we're coming from? Isn't that what it means to be neighbors?" The silence that followed was almost deafening. Emma felt hope flicker in the darkness of Mr. Thompson's skepticism. She could see his defenses starting to chip away as the rest of the group stood together, shoulders squared. They were ready for this fight, this confrontation that scared them all. Mr. Thompson opened his mouth to retort but stopped. His shoulders relaxed just a fraction, and for a brief moment, unwelcome uncertainty flashed across his face. "You think people will actually listen?" Flora smiled softly. "If you lead with vulnerability, you'll be surprised what falls away. It's not about convincing. It's about inviting others to share their truth, however messy it may be." His gaze flickered between the gathered group, and Emma felt the weight of his scrutiny. In that moment, the power of collective courage hung in the air, thick and electric. Emma took a breath. "We're ready to share our stories. And we'd love for you to join us. It's not just about getting them to come to the potluck. It's about building a community." The scowl slowly faded from his face. "It won't be easy," he warned, but there was a hint of intrigue in his voice now. "Then let us create something meaningful," Emma replied, her voice steadier now, full of conviction. "It's time to break down the walls, even if it gets uncomfortable." Mr. Thompson considered her words, and Emma held her breath, praying that he would see the potential for connection through the bubbling chaos. As he stared at them, the atmosphere shifted like a tide, welcoming uncertainty and the possibility of change. After a long pause, Mr. Thompson nodded, albeit stiffly. "Fine. But don't say I didn't warn you when things spiral out of control." With that, he turned to leave. The door swung shut with a definitive thud, and the group released their held breaths in one large exhale. Sarah broke the charged silence first. "Did he really just agree?" Emma felt a rush of adrenaline mixed with fear. "I think he might have." Flora nodded, a proud smile breaking across her face. "You've set a course now. Be mindful, as I said before, but be brave too." Their emotions were still raw, but glimmers of hope flickered in the wake of confrontation. There was much to prepare, and the path would be anything but easy. But together, they could navigate it. As they resumed planning, eyes alight with purpose, Emma felt something new, a conviction that perhaps the storm was exactly what they needed to bring about true change. But as they settled back into their discussion, she couldn't shake the feeling that Mr. Thompson's return might come sooner than they expected, bringing with it challenges they had yet to face. The days leading up to the potluck felt heavier than Emma had anticipated. Each evening, the group gathered in Flora's kitchen, the faint scent of simmering spices mingling with the sharp freshness of chopped herbs. They shared ideas, laughter, and concerns, but lingering just beneath the surface was an undeniable tension. Everyone felt it, the anticipation of something bigger than themselves looming on the horizon. Emma's fingers grazed the edge of her notebook, filled with lists and sketches of potential dishes. Yet, her mind often drifted back to Mr. Thompson. What would he do? Would he truly bring his neighbors together, or would he try to stifle their efforts? Maybe a small part of her feared he might succeed in sowing confusion and doubt. "Okay, everyone," Flora said, breaking the silence. "We need to think about how to welcome everyone. Not just the food, but the atmosphere. We want it to feel like home." Her voice was steady, making everyone feel inspired. I think we should have an opening circle, Sarah suggested, her eyes sparkling with excitement. A moment for each of us to express why this means so much. It'll set the tone. Emma nodded, picturing it in her head. Yes. We can invite everyone to share a memory or a story from their own past. It might show the heart behind the faces. As they planned, Emma felt a surge of purpose. This was more than just a potluck. It was a chance to spark real conversations, to ignite empathy and growth in a community that had been stagnant for too long. The night of the potluck arrived. Emma's heart raced as she watched neighbors walk through the door, their hesitant smiles betraying both excitement and trepidation. The long tables were adorned with colorful dishes, a feast representing traditions and cultures interwoven in a way only food could express. Tables filled with aromatic curry, sweet potato pie, spicy salsa, and platters of freshly baked bread decorated the room. Remember, Flora whispered as they positioned themselves near the entrance, we want to be the welcoming ones. Let us greet them with warmth. Emma nodded, her stomach fluttering. Right, let us make them feel at home. Soon, the room buzzed with voices. It felt electric, an undercurrent of shared nerves and anticipation. Emma spotted Mr. Thompson entering, hands shoved deep in his pockets, eyes darting around like he was searching for an escape. She felt a rush of empathy for him. Hey! She called, her voice breaking free from the crowd. His gaze landed on her briefly before looking away, but she pressed on with her smile. We're glad you came. Can I get you something to eat? Mr. Thompson huffed, but the hint of annoyance smoothed out as he just shrugged. What is the worst that could happen? Emma chuckled nervously, hoping he was just joking. As the evening unfolded, laughter and stories began to spill into the air. People were connecting and sharing. But in that moment of joy, Emma noticed Mr. Thompson lingering at the edge of the laughter, an island of solitude. Maybe I should try talking to him, she thought, torn between wanting to join the others and reaching out to him. Gathering her courage, she walked toward where he stood. His aloofness was beginning to show cracks, and Emma felt the warmth of opportunity. Mr. Thompson, she began gently, glancing around, would you like to share something about your own neighborhood history? I know you have stories to tell. As he opened his mouth to protest, Emma held her breath. Would he retreat back into his shell, or would he allow himself to engage? But just then, a raucous laugh erupted from the crowd behind her, and a burst of memory washed over him. Emma noticed the change in his eyes. There was a flicker of something curiosity, perhaps. May as well he relented, the corners of his mouth even twitching upward in something like agreement. But just as the beginning of connection took shape, a sudden commotion erupted, a loud crash that sent the conversation tumbling into chaos. Emma's heart raced as she turned, anxiety twisting inside her. What had just happened? And as chaos swelled around them, she wondered if the real test of this evening had just begun. The loud crash came from the main table, where a sprawling display of dishes teetered precariously. Someone had bumped into the edge while reaching for a serving spoon, and a cascade of vibrant food went sliding across the floor. Gasps filled the room as people jumped back, eyes wide with surprise. Emma's heart sank at the sight of spilled salsa and sweet potato pie turning into a bright, clumsy mess. But as the last of the noise faded, she noticed something shifting in the crowd. The mixture of worry and embarrassment began to turn into laughter. "Oh no, my dinner!" Someone joked dramatically, and soon chuckles filled the space, music to Emma's ears. The laughter acted like a balm on the initial chaos, easing the tension. It was a reminder that the potluck wasn't just about the food, it was about sharing moments, both good and imperfect. She turned to Mr. Thompson, who had chuckled too, albeit softly. "See?" she said, her voice light. "We're all a bit messy sometimes." "Messy is just part of it," he replied, his tone surprisingly gentle. Emma watched as others moved to help clean up. People reconnected over paper towels and laughter, forging bonds in the unconventional moments. This was it. This was the community coming alive. Then she spotted Flora chatting with a little girl, her kind voice animated as she shared stories that made the surrounding adults chuckle. Moments like these glued the atmosphere together. Emma felt inspired. "I didn't think I'd stay for long," Mr. Thompson said, his gaze glued to the warmth radiating from Flora's little group. "I thought it'd be awkward like how I usually feel at these things." "Maybe it's not about what we think will happen," Emma suggested, hoping to encourage him. "Sometimes it's about just being present, you know?" He nodded slowly, his expression softening. But from across the room, a sudden loud voice rang out, penetrating their bubble. "Can you believe this mess? This is exactly what I mean. No one can really come together without chaos," a neighboring resident yelled, frustration lacing her words. It dampened the light mood and Emma felt the air thicken. At that moment, Emma saw how the dividing lines could easily darken the evening, turning joy into skepticism. She took a deep breath, needing to address the brewing tension before it unraveled everything they had built together. "Wait!" Emma called out, stepping closer to the woman, her palms clammy. "Just think about it. Every moment tonight has been an opportunity, a chance for sharing, for support. Isn't that worth celebrating?" The room fell silent, eyes shifting between Emma and the now flustered resident. Mr. Thompson turned his attention fully toward her as well, his brows raised in expectation. It was a critical moment. She could feel the weight of it bearing down on her. With each heartbeat, she sensed the mix of hope and anxiety clashing within her. Would her plea cut through the bitterness? "Food is wonderful, but it's the stories and laughs we share here that really fill us," she continued, her voice steadying. "If we focus on those connections, this potluck can change not just our evening, but our community." A moment of uncertainty flickered in the crowd before something changed, like the first rays of sunlight breaking through clouds. The woman blinked, her face softening slightly, and Emma felt a surge of affirmation around her. But just then, as the waves of silence spread, someone from the back of the crowd shouted, "Did anyone ever think about what happens when the sun goes down?" Every head turned, and Emma's heart pounded. Instinctively, she sensed this could shift everything again. What lay ahead was a new question, one that felt heavy with promise and peril. Would they embrace the dark together, or would they retreat into their divisions? Emma's breath hitched in her throat. The hushed crowd rippled with uncertainty, eyes darting around like startled deer. That question hung heavy in the air, vibrating with the rawness of truth. She took a step forward, her heart thudding like an oversized drum. "Let us face it together," Emma shouted, her voice ringing out with a mix of ardor and urgency. "The night is filled with uncertainty, yes, but that doesn't define us. Instead, we have a choice. We can choose to connect with each other." A murmur traveled through the crowd, hesitant at first but steadily growing, until someone near the back responded, "But what if we don't agree?" It was Mark, his voice firm but questioning, reflecting the fears swirling in everyone's hearts. "Then we talk," Emma urged, feeling the electric pull of her conviction. "We talk and we listen, and we realize that it's okay to disagree. But let us hold space for each other as stories. We can learn from all the mess." As she spoke, Emma could see flickers of understanding lighting up faces. The tension, though still palpable, loosened its hold on the evening, making way for the possibility of redemption. Flora chimed in next, her voice confident. "Remember what I said? It's those unguarded moments that bring us closer. When the sun sets, we gather around the light, not just to chase away the dark, but to embrace each other fully. That's how shared humanity takes root." With those words, Emma caught sight of Mr. Thompson, who stood frozen for a moment before stepping forward, his expression transforming. "You know what? It's been painful watching this community change over time, watching people become more divided. But maybe we actually have a chance to rekindle what was lost. A collective intake of breath swept through the crowd. Emma could see hope flickering in the eyes of those around her. Suddenly, the woman who had first expressed doubt spoke up again. And what if that change brings discomfort? Her voice was full of challenge. What if we can't bridge the gap? Then we'll navigate that discomfort together. Emma responded, her heart pounding fiercely. The mess might not be pretty, but it's an essential part of the journey. Exactly, Mark added, emboldened now. We're all in this together, right? How can we learn if we don't let each other in? Laughter erupted again, lightening the atmosphere. Emma's pulse quickened. Perhaps there was a way forward after all, together in all this uncertainty. She felt invincible, accompanied by the warmth and support of a community that had drawn a circle tighter than she could have imagined. As the darkness deepened outside, light filled the room with hopeful chatter. People began to share their stories, small accounts of hardship, joy, togetherness, and fear. The tensions that had threatened to tear them apart transformed into threads of connection. Emma moved around the room, catching snippets of conversation. Sarah sharing memories of her family's struggles, Charlotte recalling her dreams after opening up, and even Flora recounting her journey as a caretaker through the years. Each piece wove their lives into a tapestry that shimmered with vulnerability and strength. Mr. Thompson stood back, a newfound softness gracing his face. "This is what I thought we were missing," he muttered, half to himself, half to Emma. "This sense of community. It's not about erasing differences. It's about stitching them together." The night wore on. The untidy chaos and laughter blended into a lively hum of shared humanity. Emma felt the weight of expectations lift as hope settled in her heart. Each laugh, each truth shared carved a brighter future, pushing back against the shadows. When the last plate was cleaned, and the final chuckles faded into easy conversation, Emma found herself surrounded by familiar smiles. She felt an overwhelming swell of joy. They had done it. They had welcomed darkness and transformed it into something illuminating. "Are we ready to keep this momentum going?" Emma asked, her voice steady, eyes glistening with tears of joy. Let this night mark the beginning of something greater, a renewed commitment to face future storms, side by side. Nods and murmurs of agreement spread through the crowd, illuminating a path that would lead them forward together. "Let us do it," Sarah cheered, her heart evident in her bright smile. Hand in hand, they had turned uncertainty into a beacon of hope. The feeling of promise washed over Emma. They were no longer just neighbors, but a community woven together by resilience. Each heart now held the truth. Together, they could weather whatever would come next, and she couldn't wait to see how brightly they would shine. This is the moment to embrace transformation, folks. If you felt inspired, you need to subscribe now to keep up with the next incredible stories. Hit that like button right now to keep the momentum going. It seriously fuels the algorithm. We want to hear from you. Comment below with your feelings about this journey, the highs and lows, and how it touched your heart. Don't wait not even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends you know they need to feel this transformation. Let us spark change together.